Hiya. The 1989 30 horsepower Suzuki 3-cylinder 2-stroke. Had some problems with it when I first bought it, only running on 2 cylinders, and I got this continual popping at tick over, pop, pop, every 5 seconds it was popping. And what it was popping and blowing a puff of smoke out from underneath the flywheel. So I've done all the normal things. Let me just make sure this is filmed. I've done all the standard things you do with a rough running engine. Carbs off, cleaned all those, reset the float heights, made sure I was getting a good spark to all the plugs, using one of the adjustable spark testers that come out to probably about 1/2 inch, 5/8 of an inch, getting a great spark on all cylinders. Had the carburetors off 2 or 3 times, still getting exactly the same problem, still on 1 cylinder, 2 cylinders, just continual popping. So started looking a bit deeper, took the flywheel off and replaced the crankshaft seal, which is quite an easy job on these to do because it's in the where the electrics are in the top. You turn it over, it's in there, so it's nice and easy to change. Done that, put it back together, exactly the same, still popping. Compression tests were all good, they were all up around the 120, 125 mark, all within that 10 psi tolerance of all 3 cylinders. So I knew the engine was pretty good. So when I started looking at this again, I took it apart again. When I had a good look at the crankshaft seal and where it sits on the ground face, on the crank itself, on the crankshaft itself, that was all pitted and scored. So what was happening, it was pushing gases past the seal, past the scoring and the pitting, and then sucking air in as well, so you're never going to get that right mixture in this top cylinder. And again, it was pushing burnt gases. That was what the popping was, coming back through the under the flywheel. So I decided to bite the bullet, and I didn't want to let it beat me, put it like that. So I stripped it all down. Nothing too hard. And when I had the engine, it came with a donor engine, another 30 horsepower, but a 1985, which was seized up. Let me just make sure I'm filming. Which I was able to use quite a few bits and pieces of it. Didn't pay much for it at all. For the 2 of them I didn't pay much, so it was worth having a look at. So I stripped it down, swapped the crank off the seized one, which was good, the bearings were good. The face that I was talking about, that was good. Swapped the pistons over, so the same pistons in this block. Put it all back together, but you probably noticed as well, I've done away with the oil injection system. It's a great system when the engines are new and when they're working well. But I just thought was one of the reasons why the crank was how it was, if it wasn't getting enough oil to that top cylinder. So I decided to do away with it all, block the hole up while the engine was apart, where the pump comes out, just down the front of the engine, and put new seals in, put it all back together, started it up. It ran only on 2 cylinders again, but the popping had gone, so I knew that was that problem. So I'd got 2 problems basically. That was the one, that was sorted, that was a major problem. The cylinder that wasn't firing now was the bottom cylinder. So again, off come the carbs, checked them again, I knew every orifice was clear. Set it to the 12 to 14 float height setting, they tell you. Bought manuals for it and all that with all the settings in. And in the end, while the carburetors were all off, I just fired some, I got no fuel supply to the engine. I just fired some Easy Start, a can of Easy Start spray down the throats of the carburetors. Well, carburetors weren't on. just directly in front of the reed valves, and it fired up. All 3 cylinders run perfectly, so I knew it was a fuel problem. Still thinking it was a carburettor problem, but it wasn't. I'll cut a long story short. Basically, just bear with me. Probably some of you have been shouting this anyway, and I just totally missed it. Fuel pump. The fuel pump works on a positive and negative pressure system working from the crankshaft. So that tiny little hole there, it's just basically, if you were just going, it's pumping a little diaphragm up and down inside, which pumps the petrol through up into the carburetors. I had this off and just pulled the pipe off, turned the engine over, and I was getting a good fuel supply. So I just presumed it was okay. But you've only got to have the tiniest of holes or splits in that diaphragm, and instead of it pushing all the fuel up to where it should be going, the carburettor, it's pushing it directly into the bottom crankshaft casing, which straight away is just like flooding the engine. Far too much fuel going into that bottom cylinder, and it'll never fire. So after many hours, it was 2 problems. One was a big problem. I mean, you know, not everybody could do that. It just cost too much. But because I'd got the donor engine, and you can pick cranks up, you know, at not a bad price, but you've got to make sure you get the good one, because if you've got to renew all the bearings and all the seals on them, that can work out really expensive. So I ordered a new pump. Ordered one of the Chinese ones, £10 English money, probably only about $8. You can get the original ones at about £45–50. But I put this one on, and it's worked perfect since. The whole engine, the 3 cylinders fire up lovely. In fact, I'll just start it up and show you. So, as I say, if this video has helped anybody, great. But as I say, if you buy a second-hand engine, it's not just a Suzuki. This one, it's basically any engine. When they're misfiring, it's nearly 9 times out of 10 it's either the carburettor, or you've got not a very good spark at one of the cylinders. But once you know you've done those 2 things, for the sake of £10, renew the fuel pump. Because it could be that, especially if you've got a 2-cylinder, it's the bottom cylinder that's giving you the problems. And the easiest way just to try it, if you just want to make sure first, is take the fuel line that comes into the engine from your tank, and when it goes up to the filter or the fuel pump, just get that and put it directly onto the carburettor that gets the first feed. You bypass the fuel pump and the fuel filter, and just keep pressing the bowl on your fuel line, just to make sure you've got fuel in there, and then start it up and just see if it does run on 2 cylinders. But if you do that, before you do that, take the bottom cylinder plug out and just pull it over a few times just to get rid of any unburnt fuel that's in there, because if there's loads of unburnt fuel in there, you can do what I'm telling you to do, and it still won't fire up because there's so much fuel in the crankshaft chamber. It just won't fire up. So just get rid of it first by pulling it over probably half a dozen to 10 times, and just clear the fuel out. Yeah, so basically, if it's helped, great stuff. Hope you get yours going. Thanks.